When I was a kid, going to the mall was always a fun time. It was a time to get away, going to all the cool stores and seeing all the people. But on December 5th, 2007, in Omaha, Nebraska, going to the mall was a nightmare. Hello, I'm Sean, and if you're new here, then welcome to my channel. If you are returning, then I'm glad to see you again. Twice a week, I research a true crime that I find interesting and tell you about it. I want to make sure that the victims are remembered. There's a lot of victims out there to remember. If you're not subscribed, please do so. It is free. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I always take time out to answer all of your comments. If you want to help me out kindly, I do have a Patreon. And another way that you can support me is you could buy me a drink. I have a link in the description, and maybe up here in the corner, I might have been able to put something there, and I'll take you to be able to buy me a drink and show me a little love, I guess. If you have any ideas for future true crimes, please feel free to leave me a message. So, now on with today's true crime. It was Christmas season on December 5th, 2007. The mall was decorated for the holidays. People were shopping. It was just afternoon at the Westroads shopping mall in Omaha, Nebraska, when all of a sudden at 1:43, shots rang out. By 1:49, 6 minutes later, 8 people were dead, 6 people were injured, and the gunman, Robert Arthur Hawkins, was also deceased. Hawkins was a 19-year-old, and this was the deadliest mass shooting in Nebraska since Charles Starkweather. You can always check out my video on Starkweather after this one. Hawkins was born in England at an American Air Force base. His parents were Ronald Hawking and Maribel Rodriguez, but she went by Molly. At the age of 4, he was placed in a hospital for persistent violent behaviors at preschool. He was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. They said that he suffered this stuff because of a chaotic home life. They never went into what the chaotic home life was, if there was, domestic violence, or if it was just because he was an Air Force kid and traveled around a lot. I really don't know. They never went into any of that detail. When he turned 14, he was placed in a mental health treatment center for threatening to kill his stepmother. This was in Nebraska. 4 months later, he became a state ward. The state of Nebraska became his parent. This lasted for the next 4 years until he was completely discharged. He had an unwillingness to improve. No matter what they did, he would not change his ways and continued being bad, I guess. During that second hospitalization, he was diagnosed with a mood disorder, but they never stated which one, and oppositional defiant disorder. In 2005, he was expelled from Fort Calhoun High School for selling drugs to a classmate. He then started to attend Papillion La Vista High School, but dropped out in March of 2006. He did decide to get his GED instead, though. Near the end of 2006, he became estranged from his parents and started living with his 2 best friends and their mother. He now was living in Bellevue, which is south of Omaha, about 10 miles. I still consider it part of Omaha because it's just one giant city. You never actually hit countryside. You're still driving through the city to get there. So it's a suburb. Deborah Kovac described him as a troubled kid. She was the owner of the house that he was living in. I don't know if she was the parent or if she just owned the house. I'm not sure who she is. She stated that he was depressed after being fired from his job and after being broke up with by his girlfriend. Now, supposedly, at work, he was stealing money, like $17, and that's the reason he was fired. And with his girlfriend, he cheated on her, so that's why she dumped him. In the summer of 2007, he attempted to enlist in the Army, but because of his mental health record, they turned him down. Days before the killings, he was ticketed for contributing to the delinquency of the minor and 2 alcohol charges. This was on November 24th, 2007. His court date was to be on December 19th. And right at the end of November, he threatened to kill a teenager's family and burn down her house because he thought that she stole a CD player from him. This kid had so many issues. On December 5th, an hour before the killings, his mother delivered his unalive note to the Sarpy County Sheriff's Department. Unfortunately, Westroads Mall was in Douglas County. Omaha's split between Douglas County, the major part of Omaha is in Douglas County, and a minor part is in Sarpy County, and that's where Bellevue is. So the note was taken to Sarpy County, and there was no way they could figure out where he was going to be. Now, the note read in part, "I just want to take a few pieces of shit with me. Just think, though, I'm going to be fucking famous." Sorry to swear. I know I normally don't in my videos, but I just wanted to read it as exactly as it is. If you pause, you can read the whole thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing. He also included his will with the notes. So, very courteous of him. Surveillance video at the mall showed Hawkins entering the south entrance of the Van Mar store around 1:36. He was unarmed at the time. He walked around and in there a little bit, looked around, and then left the store. He then returned 6 minutes later and walked to the elevator. This time he was armed with a WASR 10. It's a semi-automatic rifle. He also had two 30-round magazines that were taped together. He had stolen it from his stepfather's house. Somehow he had the gun hidden under his sweatshirt. So he took the elevator to the top floor, and he was alone, so he was able to get everything ready. When he stepped out of the elevator at 1:43 p.m., he opened fire. He killed 2 women standing by a clothing rack. Then he walked over to the atrium and started firing down. So there's just a big opening on the 3rd floor, and you can see the 2nd and 1st floor all the way down. And he braced himself up there and started firing down. He killed a man on the 2nd floor and one on the 1st floor. He then turned and shot 2 more people on the 3rd floor, one of which did die. He walked over to customer service where he shot several people, killing 3 of them. Then he put the gun under his chin and unalived himself. He had shot over 30 shots in this amount of time. He shot 12 different people, 6 who died instantly. The other one died on the way to the ER, and the last one died 45 minutes after reaching the ER. 6 minutes after the first 911 call, police were on the scene. There was still gunfire going when they arrived, but it ended quickly right when they arrived. So they still proceeded with caution, even though he unalived himself already by this time, but they didn't know, so they had to proceed if there's still an active shooter in there. In this situation, they had to treat everyone like a suspect as they figured out the truth. Survivors were evacuated and the scene was cleared to get emergency personnel in for the injured. Hawking's autopsy showed that he had a low-end dose of therapeutic Valium in his system, but he didn't actually have any other drugs in his system. The victims of this horrendous act, I'm going to, pay tribute to each of them. And this is in no particular order, so it's not an order of importance. I should have done it all in alphabetical order, but I didn't. So the victims are 48-year-old Gary Scharf. He lived in Lincoln and was on his way home from a business trip when he stopped by the store. He was divorced, but his ex-wife and him were reconciling, and they had been planning to get remarried. 47-year-old Beverly Finn. She was a gift wrapper at the Von Mar store. Sandy Dodge, who was the president of a real estate company, NP Dodge at that time, said that Beverly was a fine human being and would be greatly missed. 36-year-old Angie Schuster. She was a manager in the girls department at Van Mar. She worked there for almost 10 years and was going through school. I think she was planning to try to become a teacher. She worked on the third floor near the elevator, and her sister said that, she was in a happy place in her life, and she was more than likely one of the first people killed. 53-year-old Diane Trent was a store employee who loved to spend warm evenings tending to her flowers and drinking tea while chatting with her neighbor. She was the mother to a small dog and 2 cats. 65-year-old John McDonald was shopping with his wife. The couple lived across the river in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and was shopping for the holidays. His wife survived. He did not. He is survived by his wife, 2 kids, and 7 grandchildren. 56-year-old Gary Joy, a Van Mar employee, was a devoted son and often dined with his mom. He loved to write short stories and poems. He died before making it to the hospital, so he was the one that didn't make it to the hospital. He was survived by his 91-year-old mother and his older brother. 66-year-old Janet Jorgensen was a longtime employee of Van Mar department store. She was a friendly person and very outgoing. She was survived by her husband, 3 children, and 8 grandchildren. 24-year-old Maggie Webb was 2 weeks shy of her 25th birthday when she was killed. She was a new employee to the Van Mar store in Omaha. She had recently transferred there from Chicago. 4 other victims who were shot survived. 2 of them were critically injured. There was Fred Wilson, who was 61, who was the manager of the customer service department. He lost 3/4 of his blood and had no pulse when he reached the ER. But they fought and got him back, and from what I know, he's still alive today, and they have special blood drives just in his honor because of that. The last customer service employee was 65-year-old Mickey Olham. She suffered the heaviest injuries to the abdomen and back. She was by far the worst of the surviving victims. Now, then there was Jeff Schaefert. He was 34, and he was shot in the left arm and little finger. He was treated and released. And lastly, there was Mandy Haida. She was 34, and she was injured when a bullet fragment struck her in the left leg, and left a bruise. She didn't go to the hospital. I could not find a picture of her either. So 2 others were injured, but not from being shot. So I found absolutely nothing on them. I don't know if it's just scrambling, trying to get away and got hurt that way. But yeah, it wasn't from gunfire. On December 13th, 2007, Maribel Rodriguez issued a formal apology for her son's actions. I believe this was on Good Morning America. Flowers were placed around Van Maar, and by January 12th of 2008, funds to assist the victims' families had surpassed $1 million. A plaque was placed for the victims in the store. So this was such a tragedy, and I wasn't living in Omaha at the time, but I remember hearing that and just thinking, that's crazy. Yeah, he just wanted to take as many people with him as possible. That's terrible. That's awful. Even if a person is diagnosed with a mental illness, it doesn't always help. But it's not the person's choice on having that diagnosis. But it's also the person's choice to do what they do. I mean, it was his choice to go kill all these people. Millions of people have mental illnesses and don't go on killing sprees. I mean, I do. I have a combination of ADHD, depression, and high anxiety, and I know these struggles, but I don't blow up at people. Sometimes some of these untreated illnesses can have worse behaviors, and the combinations of some of them can. But it's the person themselves. Even when I've been at my worst, either depression or anxiety or anything, I've never thought about hurting groups of people. Even when I feel like I've been wronged by somebody. I guess it depends on the person. And that's why at the end of each video I say to be good to yourself and good to others, because it makes the world a better place, because you don't know what the next guy is suffering from. And I'll end with this. I often think of, when thinking about this, I often think of Columbine. And I remember watching a documentary on it. And one of the girls that survived, she said that one of the perpetrators, I can't remember which one of the perpetrators came up to her and put the gun in her face. And she said something like, "Please don't." And he looked at her and said, "You've always been nice to me, so I'll let you live." And then he turned to somebody else and goes, "You're a jerk," or something like that, and shot them. So I guess that's part of the reason that I say be kind to others, because you don't know if you're going to be in that situation. That person's going to be like, "Hey, you've always been nice to me. I'm going to spare you." I don't know. And you don't know what type of day that person's having. That can affect a lot of things. And I mean, I remember the old terminology from the 80s and 90s, going postal. So, and no offense to our beloved Postal Service workers. You guys have a tough job and you do a great job. I'm not putting you down, but that was a terminology. So, thank you for watching. If you're not subscribed, please do so. Check on my Patreon. I'm working on it. Give me a drink. I really need them. Be good to yourself. Be good to others. I love you all. See you next time. Bye.